Come on, Mr. Hill, you're just afraid that I'm going to beat you. This teenager had been taunting me all day. We're at a weekend teen retreat, and I'd helped set it up. And it had been a busy day of outdoor activities, and they just called us in to eat dinner. I was hungry, I was tired, and this kid wouldn't let up about playing chess. I told you we can play after dinner. And that answer didn't satisfy him. He kept pushing. Come on, Mr. Hill, come on. You're just afraid I'm going to beat you. And he already sat down there at the chessboard and moved his first pawn. And I remained standing. 4 moves later, in less than 30 seconds, I said, checkmate. Now let's go eat. And I walked away, and he just stared at the board, just really dumbfounded. Now, that was a 4-move checkmate. And it doesn't always work, but I like to throw that out there at first just to gauge to see the other person's skill level. And once I know their level, I can adjust my strategy from there. And that's what this chapter is about. It's about strategy, adjusting when you hit roadblocks, not turning around, not going home, but recalculating and navigating through them. I'm Brian Hill. I've owned multiple businesses for the past 20 years, and before I ever owned a business, I learned strategy through a chessboard and a telephone landline. This is chapter 24, called A Roadblock Ahead. So, while on your vacation trip, the book is set up like you're going on your vacation trip with your family. So there'll be a chance that there'll be detours, potholes, and roadblocks on the way. When these obstacles arise, do you just turn around and go home? No, you strategize around them, around each obstacle. Your business journey is no different. Strategy will be used, and adjusted just so you can reach your goals. In junior high, I enjoyed hanging out with this one friend. The only problem was he lived on the east side of town and I lived on the west side of town. And, it was hard for us to get together, especially in the winter months, because, neither of our parents were interested about getting out, driving across town, just so 2 junior high boys could hang out. And, junior high boys don't have much to talk about, besides muscle cars. So we came up with an idea. Actually, he did. We'll start playing chess over the telephone. And I'm like, well, how can we do that? And he said, well, you just say, okay, you're going to move this rook that's in front of you this many spaces. So this was before even knowing that a chessboard was lettered and numbered. So we would each set up a chessboard in front of us, and we'd tell each other what moves we're moving. And we would play for hours, especially in the wintertime when it got dark early. So I'm not sure when online gaming officially started, but in the early 80s, we were doing it without even knowing it. Probably should have capitalized on it. This was before texting on cell phones, before Facebook or Facebook Messenger or even email. So if you wanted to talk to someone across town, you would pray that no one in your house was using the landline phone so you can make your call. And if you were that lucky, the person that you're calling, you're hoping that no one on their side was using it. So if those 2 obstacles were removed, you could talk until one of your parents wanted to use the phone. If they needed it or wanted to keep the line open, you would lose out. And so to get around those 2 obstacles, we would usually wait till after 8 p.m. and just kind of call each other then. So, the game of chess, wonderful way to learn strategy. My personal favorite is to launch the 4-move checkmate. And, this quickly reveals the other player's skill level quickly. And then, I can pursue from there. That retreat story that I told at the beginning, that's my favorite time I ever used that move. This kid was so confident. He was taunting me. He was taunting me all day that he wanted to play. And, I said we'd play, but let's go eat first. But, he sat down, he moved his pawn, and I just stayed standing. 4 moves, 30 seconds, checkmate. And he's just kind of like, no way. And I just walked away, and, he just stood there staring at it. But, here's the thing. That strategy doesn't always work. It's a good gauge of the other player's skill, and then I can adjust from there. If it doesn't work, I'll move forward with other ideas. And, I try to be more offensive than defensive, or, depending on the player. And, I adjust each strategy. At each roadblock, I'll adjust. So strategy is needed in business, just like in chess. The strategy used while playing chess is done in your head, but in business, the strategy needs to be written out and help define what you really want and where you want to go, and so you can share it with others. There are times that, maybe on the fly, your strategy will need to be quickly adjusted, and that's okay. Just recalculate, adjust as needed, but work that written out business strategy. Because that's what's going to take you on the journey that you've prescribed for your life. Write out your strategy within your business plan. Be quick to adjust it, and so you can safely navigate around every roadblock. Because we want you to win this real life chess game called business ownership. So that teenager at the retreat learned something that day. So did I. Not every opponent is going to fall for the 4-move checkmate. Not every roadblock is going to have an easy way around it, but the principle holds true. You don't turn around and just go home, if there's an obstacle, there in your way. Back in junior high, my friend and I could have just stopped hanging out because our parents wouldn't drive us, across town. We could have just said, well, I guess I'll see you in the summer or see you at school. Instead we just strategized around it. Chess over the telephone, waiting until 8 p.m. when the landlines were free. We created our own version of online gaming before, it even existed. All because we refused to let the roadblocks stop us. Your business is going to hit roadblocks. I can promise that. I guarantee it. Supply chain issues, difficult customers, economic downturns, employees who quit, equipment that breaks, cash flow problems, competitors who undercut you, insurance bills, tax bills, regulations that change overnight. The question is not if you'll hit roadblocks. The question is, do you have a strategy to navigate around them? Because you will encounter them. And here's what I learned about strategy in business. First, write it down. Chess strategy can be lived out in your head because it's a game. Business strategy cannot. If it's not written out, it's just a good intention. Write your strategy into your business plan. Define what you want, where you want to go. Second, be more offensive than defensive. Don't just react to problems as they come. Anticipate roadblocks. Plan your moves ahead. In chess, the player who controls the board usually wins. Same in business. Adjust on the fly. And you do this without abandoning your plan. When my 4-move checkmate doesn't work, I don't quit the game. I adjust. I recalculate. I try a different approach. Your business strategy should be flexible enough to handle detours, but strong enough to keep you moving forward toward your goals. And, really, you're playing a real-life chess game. It's called business ownership. And unlike that teenager at that retreat, you don't have the luxury of walking away from the board when you lose. So write out your strategy. Be quick to adjust when the roadblocks come. And, for the love of everything, don't turn around and go home just because the road gets hard, because a roadblock comes up. Navigate around them, recalculate, strategize, because we want you to win. This is chapter 24 of my book, Business is a Journey, Not a Destination, and this journey is your life. If you're hitting roadblocks in your business right now and needed to hear this, hit that like button. subscribe. I'll be releasing all chapters from my book right here. Next chapter will be talking about generosity. So you won't want to miss it. Press on, strategize. Your journey matters. Thanks for watching.